Hi there, good evening. The name's Gus, and tonight we're going to be going over my first build of the prototype for my mobile game for game module 2101 RUNBLADE. So, I know that we were supposed to do this with the Android APK, but I sadly could not get a hold of an Android phone. Instead, I chose to build it for Windows, but being able to simulate touch controls via swipes, sort of to give you a feel for how it would work in a mobile game environment. So I'm just gonna show you the game in full motion with the build right now. So we start with a low opacity image of a prior iteration of my game, which you immediately once I tap this, you'll see a difference, a big one. So the moment that I do tap, the game is gonna start. So the score meter is gonna be going up by increments of one, every no, increments of two, or no, one every half a second. Right, that's correct. And you'll see the enemy that will spawn from the doorway approaching my character, which will be down by around here. Um, I'll explain throughout the game how the animations work and such. So we start. The enemy is approaching my player character, so the game is a parrying game. The enemy will come to you, and he will do one out of three possible attacks, and your job is to parry him. When the sword shines yellow, that sort of indicates the timing window that you have to attack, which will be tweaked in the future because it is very small, but it's not meant to be an easy game either. Every time that you kill the enemy, the score meter goes up by 100, and the level number also goes up right here. Now, I'll get some things out of the way. There's two things in this game that are non-scripted, or sorry, that are scripted. They are the only things. And when I say scripted, I mean that they don't have any player input, or they lack some player input. So the first thing is, in the game, you're supposed to swipe in the direction that the enemy is going to attack you to do a parry. In this build, you can swipe in any direction, and if you do it in the timing that the enemy is doing the attack, you will parry them. I'll show you maybe if I can, pull it off in any moment now. We'll see. Uh, there you go. So that's a swipe right, and he did left, and it parried. Okay, so that's that thing. Let me think. Also, here's the pause menu. You tap the lever to stop the game. It's supposed to be like a drop animation for that, but I couldn't get it to work. So yeah, that's the first thing. The swipes on the left, right. The second script, id seek moment, I guess, is that once they do enter the stagger, they will die there. I could not get it to work where the if statement having that be that, because like I made a method, right, where, or not a method, sorry, but a variable where you where the game checks if the enemy is staggered or not, right? And the if statement was going to be quite simple. Just if the enemy is staggered, player can deal damage to enemy. But for the life of me, I could not get it to work, and I didn't have time or resources really. So I just, chose to add the die method into one of the frames of the animation event for the stagger state. So those are the only scripted bits of the game, aside from all the code that I've done. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much the build of the game. Uh, you have three hit points. As of right now, that they don't come back, so it's kind of a go till as much as you can, and yeah, that's the build of the game itself. So now let's go over the code. So the code for the game, we'll first start with sort of discussing the animator controllers, because to me they're the most important part, right? So there's two controllers that matter in the game. There is the sword controller and there is the monster controller. So let's first go over the sword controller. So the sword controller, as soon as the game scene starts, it's gonna stay in this like in this idle state. Um, and you know, whenever the game is able to like register or detect a swipe either on the left, right, or up direction, it's going to switch to that state immediately, which after the state is over, it goes to exit, which then loops back to entry and stays idle again, waiting for a swipe to be called. Pretty simple. I also wanted to make it so that, every single frame was accounted for and like made sense to the player. So for example, you sort of move the sword up here for the first few. You see the small glint appear, and it's only in the next frame. This is the actual attack from here to here. So for the timing part of things, not only do you have to time the enemy's glint of yellow, but you also have to know when your sword will connect with them. So yeah, there's that. And each sword swipe animation has 7 frames total, just to make it consistent. And I didn't want to make one of them feel faster than the other, since that'd be kind of weird. So I wanted just the whole like set of movement to be balanced in a way. And of course, there's also the parameters. So the game checks for the boolean of is the swipe on, right? And I needed to patch it in that that like a second after it's detected as true, it goes back to false. Because if it didn't, once it goes back to idle, it's gonna go to left immediately. So I needed to deactivate these checks as soon as they happened in order to do that. So yeah, that's the monster controller, or sorry, the sword controller. My bad. Now, the monster controller is this. From the entry, we have the monster approach, which you can see right here. It's just the monster approaching the player from the doorway. Now, I must add, there's only about 4 game objects present in the scene. There's the lever on the top right, the platform that the enemy walks on, the enemy character itself, and my player character, which includes the sword as well. And once the monster approach animation is over, he instantly switches to idle, which is a few moments where basically he's going to be going from left to right very, very slowly. Let me just find it here. Sorry. Yeah, right here. And then once that's over, I have a parameter called random attack choice, right? So it's a set of 3 numbers, 1, 2, and 3. It's RNG, so depending on which number is given, he will go either right, left, or overhead. So for example, if the attack choice is rolled to 1, he will do the left attack choice. If it's a 3, he'll do the overhead attack. And 2, of course, being right. Now, whenever he will start a pattern of movement, say he'll go to the overhead, he will then be told to go to left attack and then from left to right. Ideally, I would have wanted it to be all mixed up, right? So instead of of it being him going to left 100%, I wanted it to be, he could also go to right, or it could also loop in the same state as an attack choice. But I could not get that to work. So instead, I chose to make it just, there's a chance for 3 different attack patterns, pretty much. So that would be overhead left, right, right, overhead left, or left, right, overhead. So yeah. And also, there is a trigger for the monster approach. I wanted to add that in just so that whenever the game started, I'm pretty sure that it's part of the start function of the enemy controller, that immediately it triggers this state, just to because it that's where the enemy starts to approach the player, and I wanted to make that clear immediately when you start the game. There's also another state, right? Monster staggered, which has the trigger of stagger trigger. The way this one works is that the game is going to detect when I swipe the enemy and do a parry. It's either going to fail or succeed. If the parry succeeds, no matter where the state is in, it's going to immediately transfer over to stagger state, which is going to also, switch up the animation of the monster, like, sobbing and stuff. And I made it so that, in the second frame, about there, the enemy dies. Right? That's what I was explaining earlier in the video. So yeah, that's the animator controllers for both sword and enemy. Now, let's talk about the script, right? How did I make this work? It wasn't easy, I'll tell you that much. It took a long time, but we got it to work, thank God. Let's first talk about the enemy controller, right? So, a lot of the text here in these like variables, a lot of these I don't think are valid anymore. Pretty sure that they don't do anything actually. For example, can take damage does nothing. Um, uh, respawn delay does nothing. It's because the way it works is once the enemy dies, I just have it so that like it instantiates it, so it doesn't need to respawn delay. I didn't really implement this properly. It's just there really from a leftover attempt at a different function. Anyways, so on start, you can see right here that the enemy gets health. The enemy also starts to trigger a monster approach, which I talked about earlier. And he sets the attack choice as well. So the moment that he starts to come at you, he will already know what attack to do. And then, throughout the attempt, if you say kill him, but he dies, which if he does, then he will set active false and he will reset. So when I said instantiate, that's not true actually. I just realized that also did not work. What I did instead was just reset the enemy. I called this method, which if you look at here, down about here, reset just, resets everything. The triggers, attack choice, the approach, the starting position, the animation, right? Which makes it look like it's a new enemy, when in fact it's just the same one over and over again. So yeah, that's that for the enemy respawn. There's then the staggered state logic. So this is connected to actually this animation frame in the sword controller, where you'll see here I have an event that's called that's the wrong. Okay, it's an event called update animation frame, and the int is 3, and for the other one is 4. That's because the enemy, the yellow glint, will always be in frames 3 and 4. So in order to match that for the parrying window, I wanted to, put that in there. Ideally, I could also move this up more to make the timing more, I guess, fair. But, I would have to test that with later iterations of the prototype. So yeah, back to the script though. Sorry for that. So that's enemy controller. There's also can't take damage, doesn't work. If anything, this should be like, block noted. A lot of this should be block noted. But those are the important ones. Oh, also one that really, really, really matters, of course, is deal damage to player. So I made it so that I take 1 hit of damage per sort of like cycle of the animation state, and I represent this. If you go and you look at the monster attack left, you click the function event, and you'll see that I included deal damage to the player. So the enemy will always deal damage at the final moment of its like like frame. Um, and you know what? Let's actually go over this a little bit because I think it's pretty important. So he first prepares his attack. Yellow glint. This here is the timing for you to parry, because right after this, he will get a little angry. You can see his eyebrow kind of got a bit like under, and his sword now is glowing red. So in the final build, I wanted to make it so that there is a system where you can do a perfect parry and also a normal parry. So a perfect parry would be this yellow glint, and then the normal parry would be this red 1 and 2 face. Once it hits 3 red like lines, it's a hit. You know. Um, so for this build, if you see the red, you're pretty much done. That's what that means. So yeah, sorry for just deviating like that. Anyways, so yeah, that's the most important bits of the enemy controller script. I mean, let me just see. Yep, that's pretty much it. Now let's go to the player swipe. So the player swipe is really, really important. It's, everything in the game is connected to this. So this is gonna take a bit. So for example, we have the text swipe, which is the method that detects when the touch is made into the screen, or the mouse in this case. And this then is taken to another script down the line here called determine swipe direction. So the script is trying to ascertain, in a way, if the script is mostly vertical or horizontal. And then, depending on which direction the touch is started on, or swipe in this case, it's going to be determined as swipe right, swipe left, or swipe up. This is also the name of the parameters that we have on the sword controller, right? So that's how it calls those booleans to check them and then uncheck them after a certain number of time. This down here is swipe within frame. Now, this is supposed to be the script that makes it so that if you swipe within frames 3 and 4 of the enemy attack, you parry them. And yeah, I'm pretty sure it works. This is the script that I implemented last, I believe, or method, sorry. It should be doing its job since it's working. I did debug logs for most of these methods and stuff, but for this one, I did not do it. But I could probably guess that it works how it's meant to, at least to some degree. And then there's update animation frame. Now, this calls the animation frame switching from 3 to 4 in my swipe sword controller, right? How I showed you the events in every swipe. And that could go from 3 to 4 only. And once it updates to 4, it's over. You lost your chance to attack or try to parry, and you'll get hit, right? So there's also the cooldown phase. So the game waits half a second to deactivate the boolean triggers of the parameter. This is just to prevent the game from doing it again automatically, as it would do many times before in testing. And what else do we have here? Swipe. I mean, yeah, right. So handle swipe. This one is also checking if the attack is being dealt in the third and fourth frame of animation, because this is connected to the animation states, right? So it does know when the frame hits and when it leaves. But this is what does change the staggered non-state to actually triggering the stagger state, right here. And of course, once it's over, you have a coroutine cooldown. So yeah, and then there's a score manager, which just keeps track of the score increase of the HUD elements of the UI. The health bar is not part of this. That's a different script in the assets folder. But yeah, that's pretty much the scripting of my game. Sorry that this took so long to explain, but I just wanted to get it all in detail. And I probably missed some things, but hopefully they were like not even that important to what makes Run Blade. Really, thank you for watching the video. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Have a nice rest of your night, and yeah, see you.